Good evening and welcome. My name is Stephanie Rivera and I'm the Community Engagement Editor for the Long Beach Post. In just a moment, you'll hear about the Local Control and Accountability Plan and what that means for parents of high-needs students at LBUSD. But first, I want to introduce you to our Community Editorial Board member, she's part of our board who is made up of neighbors with different life experiences and expertise that inform opinion pieces and editorials that they write. Tonight, our board member, Mariela Salgado, has brought a topic near and dear to her to the public space with special guests and an opportunity for the audience to submit questions in the chat box. Mariela is not only our board member, but also a small business owner, Long Beach Parks and Recreation Commissioner, and an active mother of 2 LBUSD students. Without further ado, your host, Mariela Salgado.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you all for joining us. Tonight, we'd like to share with students, parents, and community members a very important Long Beach Unified School District School Board vote happening tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow, our school district will be adopting its Lcap and budget for fiscal year 2021-22. What's the Lcap? What does this mean for your child? Where do I go to learn more? Information will be added to this chat for you to review and read. While we may not have the time to dive into the details of the plan and budget in specifics, we do want to provide information for those listening. Our school district has a historic and unprecedented opportunity to transform the learning experience for our children as we head into recovery, which every student can be supported to thrive. The question is, will we meet this need? Before I introduce our lovely guests, I'd like to share a bit of history of how these special guests and 2 organizations came to work in Long Beach. In 2013, California passed a school funding law, the Local Control Funding Formula, also known as LCFF, to focus on student success. The LCFF requires school districts to involve parents in planning and decision-making in developing the Local Control and Accountability Plans, or short for Lcap. A few years later after implementation, in 2017, public advocates submitted a uniform complaint procedure on behalf of Latinos in Action and Children's Defense Fund California, alleging LBUSD misspent millions in LCFF supplemental and concentration funds. In 2018, a 3-year settlement agreement was reached in which LBUSD commits to increase tutoring and counseling services for the 30th highest need schools, and 2, to improve the district stakeholder engagement process. The settlement expires soon on June 30th, 2021. I am part of a community group informally called by the school district as the Lcap Working Group. 2 of the members of our group who were also engaged in the settlement are here with us today. Let's meet Nicole Ochi, Senior Attorney of Education Equity for Public Advocates, and Angelica Salazar, Director of Education Equity for Children's Defense Fund California. Both support parents and community stakeholders in ensuring our school district is meeting student needs. Angelica, in simple terms, for those listening, what is the Lcap? What are high-needs students, and why is it important for our students?
Thank you, Mariela, for the opportunity. The Lcap is a tool for students, parents, and all stakeholders to understand and engage in the process of making financial investments in the learning of all students, but especially in the learning of high-needs students who are technically low-income students, foster youth students, English learners, homeless youth, but also because of the students who tend to fall under those groups, Black and Brown students and other students of color. The Lcap, the letter is actually an acronym for Local Control Accountability Plan. This was created by a law that was signed in 2013 called the Local Control Funding Formula. And the goal of that law was to make state funding for public schools equitable. Every school district and county office of education has to attach this Lcap, or a planning document, to its annual budget, and it has to be approved by July 1st of every year. The Lcap contains a lot of information that's really critical for transparency and for holding schools and districts accountable. This includes explanations of the district's goals and planned services and programs for closing the opportunity gap, metrics for how they assess need and measure progress, and also updates on how they spend previous year's funding. It also should include a description of the feedback that the district got from students, parents, and stakeholders, with information on how that feedback was incorporated into the Lcap. since high need students, and they're also called sometimes unduplicated pupils, ultimately generate more funding for Long Beach Unified and all other school districts. The LCAP has to show how specific funding streams are principally directed at those high need student groups and how LBUSD is improving and increasing services and outcomes for these students. I want to highlight that public advocates and many other statewide groups should be credited with helping pass LCFF many years ago, and it's been really a privilege to be able to support students, parents, and other community-based organizations to really activate the law. The law, or the LCAP as a tool, isn't really a tool unless stakeholders engage. And so building capacity to engage year after year and be able to read it and review it and hone in on the things you're interested in so that you can go to the school board or go to your school site and say, this is the program that is listed in the LCAP is something that, my son or daughter or my child should be receiving, and really holding them accountable for those services to reach students, especially high need students.
Thank you. I mean, I know that particularly in a time in which the pandemic highlighted the inequities and the digital divide for our students, I think it's very important that parents and community stakeholders stay engaged on the LCAP. So Nicole, can you share post-pandemic, how is this year's LCAP different? How much state and federal aid did our school district receive?
Sure. I would like to just maybe start with some context. So I'm going to share my screen here to give you a sense of the big picture before I get into the details. So what I'm showing right here is the budget overview for Long Beach Unified for next year. And this big circle right here is the total budget for Long Beach, and that's $1.1 billion for next year. And when we talk about LCFF, we're talking about the majority of funding that most districts receive in their budget. In Long Beach, it's 66% this year. And you can see there's also a number of other sources here. So the LCAP, excuse me, is really focused on the LCFF dollars, and particularly these supplemental and concentration grants, which are sort of what we call equity dollars. They must be used to increase or improve services for high need students. But really the LCAP shouldn't be limited to just these funds. It's a strategic budget plan for equity. And I think many districts, including Long Beach, sort of miss an opportunity when they think about this as only a compliance document. So this is sort of the total budget. And then I'm going to switch over here really quick to show what the additional funds are for COVID relief. And these are funds that are, one-time funds. They're unique to our exceptional sort of circumstances, and they were included in that prior pie chart. So what you can see here is that Long Beach received about $90.7 million last year in COVID funds, and the deadline to use those is actually not until 2022. So it has already spent some of this money, but may still have some left. And you can see that there's this huge infusion of funds, $385.6 million in various COVID relief funds that can be used through 2024. And so as you can see in Long Beach and in every other district in the country, really, there is an unprecedented opportunity to really transform schools and rebuild in a way that we've never had the funding to do before. So that's sort of like the picture of the funding. And then if we talk about what's different in the LCAP this year, there's a couple of unique features because there's a new template, a new plan that's rolling out for the first time this year. And the first thing that is really important to know is that this is the first year where districts are allowed to or encouraged to create these focus goals. And focus goals can focus on certain subgroups that a district has historically failed to serve well, or a particular issue like chronic absenteeism or something like that has been a particular problem. Unfortunately, we are not seeing Long Beach use that opportunity in the LCAP, but I think that's something important for the community to know, that you can advocate for Long Beach or whatever district you're in to really focus on an entrenched problem and direct resources to resolve that problem. Another thing that is unique to the LCAP this year is that it has these expenditure tables that make it a lot easier for someone who doesn't want to read a 100+ page document to understand what's in there. So I'm going to share my screen again, just to show really quickly. This is, page, 9 of the LCAP. And so you can see here that these are all of these sort of equity expenditures in Long Beach's LCAP. And so you can quickly look at this and you can say, hey, there's supposed to be restorative justice at every school. So schools, they're entitled to extra tutoring support. Go to your principal and say, hey, where's that extra tutoring support that the district has said you are supposed to offer? So that's just a quick look at two of the important new features of the LCAP this year. And I'll stop there.
We'll make sure to include that link for everyone to see. As a parent of 2 elementary age children, I have a kindergarten and a 2nd grader now. We're moving on, but it sounds to me like some of the information is there in this revised plan, LCAP plan. But where can one find what funds their school site is receiving, or how these funds are being utilized at their school site, Nicole?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Mariela. That table I showed earlier, here I'll share it again, is an easy way to see what's available at your school site. But it's not the only way. You can also look at, school site plans. So here's the webpage on Long Beach Unified's website that links to all the individual schools' plans. So you should be able to look at these plans as well to see how they're spending their money. Because a lot of money, there's 2 ways basically that money gets to, or resources get to schools. One is when the district allocates it. Like the district might allocate a certain number of teachers to every school based on enrollment or based on, maybe they'll add some other equity measures like more nurses at higher need schools. But the other way is to give out school autonomy money. And Long Beach does this as well. So it gives money to schools, individual schools, and says, spend it however you need it according to your site needs. And these plans right here describe how different sites are choosing to use those autonomy dollars. So I think looking at these plans and looking at, this sort of expenditure table where it actually says the location of each service and program are 2 ways that you can try to hold accountability at your school site level.
Thank you, Nicole. So we know now a little bit more about the school district. It sounds to me like it's getting close to, if not more than, $400 million, in addition to, did you say $1 billion, Nicole? That's a lot of money.
So that $1.1 billion is inclusive of the COVID relief funds.
Thank you for the clarification. So the vote is tomorrow. The amended LCAP plans have been released. As for me, as a parent of 2, as I said, I've had a number of issues, technology issues. My children, fortunately, are not, might fit some of those needs that you spoke of earlier, Angie, but what can I do, or why should parents be watching what's happening here in the school district, or some of these programs and initiatives that they're moving forward in the LCAP plan? I'll start with Angie.
Thanks, Mariela. As Nicole was saying, the purpose of the LCAP really is to support a plan to close opportunity gaps. And for those of you parents that know that your child needs a special intervention, social emotional counseling, some other specific service, especially during this recovery period where we do have unprecedented funds, you should be watching what services you have at your school. And Nicole showed you where you can look to see. Sometimes there's a lag time between the year that those services will be funded and when that's reported out in those documents. And so in real time is also possible to ask your teacher. The LCAP says that there's tutoring funds available. How can we make sure that my child is enrolled in that tutoring program, or if it's a, an issue regarding maybe your student is being punished for some behavior. You could say, I understand that both the Extended Learning Opportunities Plan and the LCAP are investing millions in restorative justice. And I will underscore that it's so many millions. We've never seen this kind of investment in Long Beach in restorative justice. So, asking for that as an alternative. Why is my child being sent to the hall or, sent out the class, especially when we're really recovering from the pandemic and we've already spent so much time out of class? Can we, use that restorative justice program to address these concerns that the teacher has, maybe some needs that the student has. So it's really important to be watching what your child is getting at school in terms of support, both academic and social emotional, and really that the promises that are laid out in the LCAP are actually being realized at your school site. Again, assuming that your school site is listed or is a high need school, but even if not, you should always ask because, school site administrators have a lot of have discretion, some discretion on how to use funds, and there are processes too. And so learning those processes, like school site council processes. And you should also be watching the kinds of, these school board meetings are virtual right now, and we're not sure exactly when, if, actually they've always been televised. So you can always, I think, watch them from YouTube. But, one day maybe you can go back in person and really watch what your, who is my school board member? What questions are they asking? Are they representing my needs? And so really knowing who your school board member is and, being in contact with them, building a relationship, maybe working with other like-minded parents at your school to raise your concerns and make sure that your representative is voicing those concerns. That's another way that you can have input in this process. And last, I'll say that I think one concern that we have is really understanding what the virtual learning option will be in the fall, and ensuring that we're not forgetting about those students, that the equity also exists for them, that they are receiving a high quality program if they're unable to come back to school, still during the next school year. And so, the best way that we sometimes hear about things that we can advocate for is really through word of mouth, really that ground truthing, because again, the data lags. We see the data after, the assessment happens or after, there's been a need that's been unmet. And so you all as parents are the first piece of data. You all as parents and students, I won't dismiss, and other stakeholders are the first ones to raise anecdotal data and say, this is happening at my school, we have this need, and it's been unmet in this unprecedented year of need. So I'll leave it there and pass to Nicole.
Yeah, I think Angie covered most of it. In terms of what you can do, I guess I would encourage you to first to understand, to know what you're entitled to. And there are some new things that are happening this year that are important to know about. For the first time, for example, Long Beach Unified is doing initiating a Black Student Achievement Program. So if you're a Black parent, Black student, Black educator, maybe that's something that you want to actually get involved with in the advisory group, and find out how you can influence how that program rolls out. There's also starting a new language accessibility unit, and there's supposed to be an advisory group around that. So maybe those are, that's another group, if that's an interest of yours or that's a concern of yours, that you could join. And then there's sort of other things too, there's these new wellness centers at every high school. There's a restorative justice coach at every elementary school. And these sound awesome on paper, right? But I think it's our job collectively, our job as stakeholders, to really see, are these real commitments? Are these really meeting the needs? And then to speak up if they're not. And the ways to speak up, you can start with your school site administrator, talk to them, but then you can go up, you can talk to your board member. And, I hope I'm not overstepping by saying you can reach out to us, the informal, LCAP accountability group, because we also have a deep interest in making sure that everything and anything in the LCAP is real, and is actually meeting the needs of low-income Black and Brown communities who need the support and deserve the support that they have so long been deprived of. So let us know, because we're also trying to figure out, what staff members are in charge of what programs and things like that. So I think I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. I can't stress that enough and agree with you all about the need for parents to participate in this conversation. I know we're all very busy with children. God knows during the pandemic, with 2 kids online and way too many interruptions, it's been challenging, but I think it's very important that we all understand what the LCAP is. So I appreciate your time to let us know. We've added links to this podcast for you to view, read, and encourage students, parents, and community members to remain engaged with their school sites, administrators, and school boards. Again, we will add those links in the chat for you all to view later. And please stay engaged with us. And as Nicole said, send us a message. Thank you.